Hi, Dr. Dave Pern here, your New York City chiropractor. And now we're going to talk about Week 5's injuries. We actually are going to talk about two. Odell Beckham Jr. had a fibular fracture and J.J. Watt had a tibial plateau fracture. They're both in the same area, lower extremity below the knee, so I figured both of them be easy to discuss. Again, I want to remind you, I'm not treating either of these people or these athletes. This is just for informational purposes only so that you can understand the injuries yourself, and if you have to make decisions for fantasy football or anything else, you'll have a better understanding of these injuries for, going forward. So what we're going to discuss, we maybe need to understand a little bit of anatomy. So we're going to look at a picture of the lower leg so we can understand the bones involved. Okay, first let's orientate you where these bones are in the body. This is the tibia and this is the fibula. This is the foot. This is the ankle joint. That is the femur. So the tibia and fibula are the bones of the lower leg. The tibia is the bigger bone. That's the one you feel when you touch your shin. The fibula is a small bone. The only part you really could feel is on the outside of your ankle. That is part of the fibula. It is a small non-weight bearing bone. Okay, so for J.J. Watt, we have what's called a tibial plateau fracture. We're looking at the tibia. This is the shin bone. When you touch the front of your leg, a lower leg below the knee, this is the bone you feel. Tibial plateau is the area that is part of the knee joint articulation. This is weight bearing, and as you can see from work when J.J. Watt was injured, it caused immediate pain and discomfort, and he had difficulty walking because essentially all the weight that was being put on his knee was being put on the fracture. This usually requires some screws to be put in place, as is confirmed because he was sent to the hospital and they performed surgery. Odell Beckham had a fibular fracture. This is the fibula, and he injured this area here. Typically the distal or bottom portion of the fibula breaks. It's often seen when the ankle is twisted or there's an ankle sprain. What they'll do is they'll put a plate in. This injury heals very easily because this is a non-weight bearing bone, so it's just a question of getting it to fuse. This injury up top, tibial plateau, a little bit more complicated because it involves a joint, and there's also weight bearing. So it can the fracture can disturb the surface of the joint, and likewise, because of the amount of weight that's placed on it, there can be residual discomfort a lot easier in this area as a result of the weight bearing. So going back to Odell Beckham, he had a high ankle sprain earlier in the season. Could this be related to the fracture? It is possible. Obviously, the injury itself, where he got rolled up upon when he broke the fibula, is tough to. It would be tough to say that he couldn't just get a fracture from that onto itself, but this is what a high ankle sprain is. Simply, there's tissue between the tibia and the fibula, and this tissue is very much a ligament. It's a syndesmotic joint, and this tissue can be torn, and when you put weight on the bone, the ankle bones below will separate almost like a chisel and separate these two bones away from each other. This can be very, very painful and uncomfortable when a person's pushing off or twisting, and that's why high ankle sprains are so frustrating for the athlete. Now, why would it be related? Well, if this didn't heal all the way and he didn't have full ankle stability and strength on his ankle, it is quite possible that this bone got compromised when he was rolled up upon, and it could have made the fracture more likely to happen. And here we go with a zoom in of the front. We have the kneecap right there, and we have the tibial plateau, and you can see if there's a fracture, it sometimes can be very complicated, multiple pieces, and they have to run a screw through the entire thing to hold it together. And you can see how this may affect the surface of the joint as a result. Should be noted with Odell Beckham Jr., he had a lower leg injury twice over in the same leg, the first being a high ankle sprain. And both of them were a result of catching a high pass in which the tackler went low. I think until the NFL changes its perspective on illegal hits, these low hits are going to cause injuries of very similar variety to both the knee and the lower and the ankle. Eventually, they're going to come to the conclusion they're probably going to have to make a tackle for an exposed player above the knee and below the shoulders, but that's going to take some time to figure out, I think. As far as J.J. Watt's concerned, Long term, this injury can have implications on his ability to play. Tibial plateau fractures are fairly serious. They do heal, but they can have some residual on the joint and the person's ability to change directions and push off well. So it's going to be probably a pretty long road for rehab for him. Odell Beckham with the fibular fracture, once the plates are placed and it heals, typically this non-weight bearing bone heals fairly well and he can return to sport fairly easily afterwards, usually with no restrictions. For more information like this, like our Facebook pages. We'll post the next week's injuries and talk about the injuries throughout the season for the NFL. And we also give daily health care updates. We'll see you soon.